Okay, David Johnson, which systems are the most difficult to put together?
Every single time you go through one of these mergers, you're basically ripping apart your risk system. You're ripping apart the processes by which the chief executives and the operating folks are getting their information. And so you have to spend a little bit of time reassembling that in a common platform that works. And that takes a significant amount of effort and a significant amount of work. But again, it really comes back to, once I have that done, it really comes back down to, now what am I going to do with the people to get them to interface with this business, to interface with this model, and how am I going to enable people to help me extract that value?
The most difficult thing to pull together is the compliance and processes that are in a company, and it doesn't create value whatsoever. I think international companies have an advantage in a lot of ways to U.S. companies because their first element would be the people, and the second element would be the actual strategic vertical in which they were trying to perform. So they would be the retention of scientists or the improvement in best practices. But here in this country, compliance would be the very first thing that I would consider when doing an acquisition because of the environment we work in.
I think it's particularly important to set out the vision. But one of the problems we've had is we've set out a vision to the outside world, but we very rarely have talked about putting that vision into the company and getting the company to everybody within that company to buy into the organisation and its direction. Most parts of that company haven't understood what that direction was and what was the impact on their day-to-day life and how could they contribute to the growth of that new organisation, that new vision, where it's going.
What do you think makes it so difficult to pull these things together?
A clash of two cultures. You get a company with a bad culture and a company with a good culture, and the bad culture will basically, it's the old rotten apple thing. The bad culture will destroy the good culture. So I think if you're merged two companies and you have one with a bad culture, make sure you merge with a company with a bad culture. Then you'll just have a bigger bad culture company.
Well, I agree. You know, it's interesting on the people aspect. I was visiting a gas processing plant just on shore in Louisiana, and the employees there had worked for 6 different companies, all at the same plant, mind you. It had just been traded amongst companies, and it was really hard for them to get excited about anybody's vision or even to really understand and know who they were working for in the first place.
Some acquisitions are simply to improve your tax structure. You can do acquisitions that have very little to do with the culture of your company, but might have a great deal to do with the financial performance of your company.
May I give you a case in point? There's a nice little company by the name of Key Energy Services, well managed now, well financed now. Beginning in the late 90s, it had been taken over by several investment bankers operating out of a nice little town at the head of the Delaware River on the border of New Jersey and Pennsylvania. They went out and did 116 acquisitions. And guess what? They had 116 different accounting systems. And guess who never put them together? That ended in the year 2003. Since then, the company has been struggling mightily and still has yet to file its 2003 10K. Forget about the 04, 05, 06, and quarters and so forth. It's been that bad. And the people are still laboring in the vineyards. But when you buy companies who put their receipts and the like and invoices in shoeboxes and the like, and they disappear, that's pretty hard to tell the SEC that you have a comprehensive reporting system.
There's one glaring example, I think, out there that's different, and that's if you look at the model that Fugro has internationally. They have pieces, they're like a conglomerate. They've got airplanes, boats, seismic crews, gravity meters, subsea stuff. I mean, they've got so much stuff. I don't, when I'm an outside guy, I look at them and I say, I don't even know where to go inside their organization to ask them, you know, which piece of their business they could help us with. So, you know, but on the other side, their argument is, well, I keep my expert teams in their various little silos, and they're great, and they do their great job, and that's who you go to.
Good stuff, gentlemen. Coming up next, we will list some of the latest examples of foreign companies taking over U.S. companies, and maybe even hear some prophecies of what companies could be next. Don't miss that as we continue. You're watching World Energy Television. And we're back. The industry has seen several examples of foreign companies taking over U.S. companies. Hydro buying Spinnaker, Woodside buying Explorer, CNOC attempting to take over Unocal. Could we see more of this trend? Matt Simmons.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would think at some point you could see, I'm just making this up, but you could see, Sabic a week or two ago just announced that they're buying General Electric's plastics business. It was one of the core businesses of General Electric 20 years ago. I could see a headline 5 years from now, Saudi Aramco backs into becoming a publicly traded company by acquiring ExxonMobil.
I would tend to agree with him. I think anything is possible out there. The only conditions on life as we know it currently, at least in the United States, is that there are some definite people who will not be allowed to invest in this country. The National Iranian Oil Company comes to mind. But PDVSA, for instance, has 1,000 people right here in Houston, moved down from Tulsa, and owns 5 refineries. And I do think that as the climate of opinion changes and more people become interested in buying U.S. assets for whatever reason, that we will see the Chinese come in. We will see anybody with a deep pocket who is politically acceptable on our shoreline be able to buy assets.
Tom Fry, what do you think about the trend of these acquisitions going over international borders?
Well, I do think we'll see more and more of it. The large international companies are driven by the need for reserves and supplies. They're going to have to look all over the world for them, and they're going to be looking for companies that they can acquire.
But I think the issue really for that we're all struggling with here is the organizations that are buying into U.S. companies don't have the same level of transparency, and many of them have a lot of government control, and we don't have access to a lot of what's going on inside this. We know that many countries do, unlike the U.S., have energy policies that make use of their national oil companies.
It's interesting. It's not U.S. companies that they're acquiring; it's international reserves that are being acquired. So I'd say we should separate how we talk about that. They're not really the least bit interested in a U.S. company. Whoever had the contracts for those international reserves, that would be the target that they're pursuing. So it's really a consolidation of reserves based upon, and again, this is where we're beginning to get in the area of policy and geopolitics. But 10 years ago or more, I traveled around the world, talked to ambassadors, and they would say, not ambassadors, but oil ministers, they would say to me, John, in another decade, we'll be importing. These were companies that were currently exporting. The last year or so, you go to each country and they say that we're putting together a very strong energy security policy. And when every country is an importer, then that doesn't work. And when every country has an energy security policy and it's based on hydrocarbons, that doesn't work either. And so I think that this is becoming a governmental issue in a lot of aspects with regard to securitization of energy. And we're beginning to see some conflict there, and we're going to continue to see that conflict until we resolve how energy is going to be partitioned to meet the global demand.